Hi everyone, what I'm going to do in this video then is to move on to the next publication by Strauss dealing with post-tonal voice leading. So that is titled Uniformity, Balance and Smoothness in Atonal Voice Leading, 2003 published, and obviously you have a copy of that I sent out attached to the previous email. I'm going to cover today pages 305 to 23, so 305 to 23. What I'm thinking is, depending on how you feel about it, if you've been able to read through the entire article and you feel that you have enough guidance, we might do what we did before. And the next video I would release would actually cover the 2005 publication, but that depends if you feel that you have enough information to work with. All I am thinking is I'd like a week set aside to be able to prepare the next written submission. That would be due on Monday of finals week. So it might be that we decide we'll just work on 2 articles and that the next video I release will be the last one, essentially. So I'll do 1 more video next week. Or I could move on if you feel like you want to cover more ground, and I can introduce the final article and you can work independently on the remainder of this article from 2003 and the remainder of the other article from 2005. As before, it's helpful if you discuss that amongst yourselves first. So if you send an email to each other and reach a consensus and let me know. But what I'd hope to be able to do is to release the next video on Wednesday. So I really need that response from you by, let's say, Tuesday at about 11 a.m. So Tuesday at about 11 a.m, then maybe the responses to this video come back in for 2:15. But that gives me time then to work to prepare the next video. Otherwise things do get out of sequence and it's very difficult to catch up just because there's so much to do. And transfer it, that's really because of transferring it into this new medium. Okay, so I will cover the opening segment of this article, which I guess is a good way into it. From that point, decide if you feel confident you could find your way through to the end, and I'll move on to the next article. Otherwise, let me know if you feel like we need to cover another segment of this article together, and then we'll decide what to do at that point. Okay. So I'll begin on page 305 then, and let's say this as an opening summary. So, as we've discovered from Strauss's earliest publication, the prospect of modelling post-tonal voice leading is linked to a transformational model, connecting, first of all, the same kinds of set class via TN or IN, or differing set classes via near TN or near IN. So same set classes via TN or IN, differing set classes via near TN or near IN. At the same time, the idea of near TN or IN raises questions as to the criteria we do adopt for assuming that there is a connection there to observe. There's also a need, in a broader theoretical sense, for a qualitative categorization of voice leading extension. In other words, chord to chord might be okay, but what about a bigger conceptual frame in which to place post-tonal voice leading? David Lewin, in the mid-1990s, raised a question as to, okay, so we understand what kind of collections we're dealing with in the main now, but could we actually begin to think in terms of, say, a post-tonal species counterpoint? So you're thinking back to tonal models. What about a post-tonal species counterpoint? What would that actually look like? And if we look at footnote 1 here in Strauss, he doesn't credit Lewin. He goes on to talk about him later. But he links this to an article by Maisel, published in 1999. But it's making the same point. Post-tonal counterpoint, we've said that pitch class counterpoint, fine, but can we actually think through a number of categorical demarcations that help to make more sense of that rather than just accepting close chord to chord or sort of larger spanned connections but with no overall rationale. So, in the event, in this article, Straus will advance 3 concepts named in the article title as governing norms for TN, for IN, and for overall voice leading quality, and also for the ways in which they relate to a more universal mapping of post-tonal collections. So we won't deal with that directly today. That comes in a later stage in the article, in the second half of it. Page 306 then. Having revisited his earlier thoughts over the opening 2 pages of this second article, including the relationships among practical part, contextual line, and ideal voice, Straus goes on to provide abstract models of both TN and IN in his example 1. That's on page 307. Examples 2 and 3 then provide excerpts from Webern and from Ravel, which offer concrete illustrations in the manner of Straus's prior publication from 1997. Example 4 extends the abstract principle, then, of example 1 to advance models of identical set class connection from a single pitch class to a tetrachord, but these are the same set classes that are being connected according to various permutations. He says that actually the total possibilities are factorial in nature. So if we're dealing with tetrachords, say, the total number will be equivalent to 4 times the next number down 3 times the next number down 2 times the final number 1. So 4 times 3 times 2 times 1 will give us 24. If it was just a trichord, that would be 3 times 2 equals 6 times 1 equals 6. All right, so here's my first question for you then. There are going to be 8 questions overall. So in example 5 on page 313, Straus introduces a series of models for near TN and near IN for set classes up to tetrachords involving either one larger or one smaller cardinality. So in other words, from a trichord to a tetrachord, tetrachord to a trichord, or trichord to a dyad, dyad to a trichord, and so on. But always just one bigger or one smaller. So here's the point of my question. What are the 2 words that Straus employs to describe, firstly, expansion, and secondly, contraction? So what are the 2 specific words that Straus employs to describe expansion and contraction? So 2 very short words here that you need to think about. Page 314. Having noted that these terms might be extended to sets of various cardinalities, i.e. beyond +1 or -1, Straus introduces example 6 to tabulate the range of distinct possibilities that might arise. Now here's question 2. At this point, Straus also makes reference to 2 of the keywords from his title. So at this point, Straus makes reference to 2 of the keywords from his title. Which word models TN? And which word models IN? So words from the title, which of those words applies to TN? Which of those words applies to IN? Question 3. Straus's example 7 on page 315 shows how specific members of differing trichords might be modelled from most uniform to least uniform. Which set classes are those trichords drawn from? So give me the names of those. That's the first part of question 3. Second part, what term does Straus employ to designate the distance by which one pitch class departs from the principle of consistency? And this is a feature which is measured in interval class 2s in half steps, notated in parentheses beneath the asterisk TN. But what word designates the discrepant motion of one of the pitch classes that doesn't conform to the direction that the others take? So So you've got a short word, single word for that. What word does he use? And he uses that measure to indicate the scale by which one possibility is closest to the ideal or at the ideal or furthest away from the ideal. So first part of that question, tell me what the set classes involved are for example 7. Secondly, tell me what the short word is that describes the number of interval class 2s for any particular model. Question 4. What term does Straus apply to the asterisk T3 connection that is most nearly transposition-like in example 7? So the one that is most transposition-like, which is asterisk T3, he has a 2-word term for that. What is the term? So we'll move on again to page 317. In example 8, Straus traces the same concepts as they might be used to connect a member of interval class 5 and set class 014, what Alan Fort would call 3-3. As before, they are graded according to most and least uniformity, and the offset numbers, the total interval class 2 number of deviations, is shown once more in parentheses beneath the asterisk Tn representative. Here's my question 5, moving on another page. David Lewin and Ian Quinn have coined terms to describe near Tn. So David Lewin and Ian Quinn have coined terms to describe near Tn. What term did Lewin prefer? And which term does Quinn prefer that contrasts with actual, what he calls crisp Tn? So Quinn refers to actual Tn as crisp Tn, but he uses another term to refer to near Tn. So I want those terms if you can detect them. Okay, now moving forwards again. In this next section of the article, which is section 5, Straus puts forward 2 further models in example 9 on page 319 and example 10 on page 320 to illustrate the possible mappings for near IN. So we've looked at near Tn, we're now moving on to near IN. In doing so, he makes the case for symmetrical balance as an ideal condition by analogy with Michael Friedman's characterization of ideal transposition. So in other words, what Ian Quinn would call crisp transposition, in Michael Friedman's sense, it should ideally resemble parallel pitch class organum. So we think of medieval music, medieval sacred music, and the way that the parts all move in parallel. That's the ideal for Tn. The ideal for In will be symmetrical balance. As before, deviations from the ideal are measured between most and least extremes, and the degree of divergence measured in interval class 2s is placed in rounded parentheses beneath the asterisk IN guideline. So 3 questions and then we're done in this video. Question 6. Section 6 begins with a definition of voice leading smoothness. So this is the last of Straus's title terms. What 2-word phrase describes the overall sum of the intervals traversed between origin and destination? So what 2-word phrase for Straus describes the overall sum of the intervals traversed between origin and destination? Question 7. Straus goes on to note that this sum adds together all of the intervals measured as unordered pitch class intervals or just straight interval classes if you prefer. But people who've followed through the Straus course text know that he also calls those unordered pitch class intervals, but interval classes is the general theoretical term we can also adopt. So he says that what we're talking about with smoothness is all of those intervals measured in pitch class space as interval classes and added together. Now, here's the point of question 7. Does he regard this measure as an operation or a quality? Is it an operation, like a mapping, or is it a quality? final question, question 8. So this is a historical question, and we can trace it to footnote 42, which makes it clear how important this has been to the history of music theory, because Strauss says that the preoccupation with minimal movement between harmonies has been a consideration for music theorists all the way from Marchetto of Padua in the 14th century to Arnold Schoenberg in the 20th century. So theorists thought this through from very early days, and they were still thinking it through all the way to Schoenberg in the 20th century. Here's the point of the question. Which phrase, and it's placed in italics, did Schoenberg advocate in this regard? Which phrase in italics did Schoenberg advocate or add to describe this sense of minimal movement? Okay, so those are all the questions. That's as much as we're going to cover today. We've ended on page 323. So I'll look for answers to the questions coming in at around 2:15 on Tuesday. If before then, you can let me know if you want to have the next video devoted to this article, or if you're happy to find your way through to the end and then we can move to the next article, that will be helpful. If you can let me know, as I say, by around 11 a.m. on that same day, fantastic. If you can do it on Monday, that would be better still, but that might not be possible. But get together and then let me know what your views are. Okay, so this is not good weather today. It's raining heavily, but tomorrow I think Saturday and Sunday are brighter. Even if we haven't got anywhere to go, we can enjoy the weather. So have a decent weekend, and we'll be in touch by the 01 miracle of the internet at some point early next week. All right. Okay, I'll say goodbye for now.